Hey everybody, welcome to Crazy Tech Lab, and today we have a very special case in from MSI. It is a Project Zero compatible case in the form of, now let me see if I get this right, the MPG Velox 300R Airflow PZ. I think I've got that right. So PZ on the end, we'll just call it the 300R for the time being, or maybe 300R PZ. PZ or PZ stands for Project Zero. And Project Zero, if you're not familiar with it, is where you have the connectors on your motherboard on the rear of the PCB. So what that means is basically all those connectors, your 24-pin ATX connector, your 8-pin CPU connector, fan headers and all that kind of stuff are poking through the motherboard tray, and that means that the front side, the side that we've got here, doesn't have, well, it hardly has any cables because you don't need to route them through any cable routing holes on the side of the motherboard tray or anything like that. They all poke directly through the motherboard tray, and you just hook stuff up in the rear, which the first time I did it, I thought this is how everything should have been from the start. So it's a super cool feature. This case supports all of the Project Zero motherboards out there as well, and other manufacturers do have motherboards that support it. It's kind of a standard now, where if you get a motherboard that supports this standard from another manufacturer, it will be supported in this case. So if you want to get the 300R Project Zero because it's a really good price, or for other features, perhaps the cooling is really good, or something like that, you're just really taken with this case. It is compatible with other Project Zero motherboards as well, and other manufacturers, as I mentioned, do use slightly different terms, so you'll just have to have a look out there and see what it's actually called. And also, this case does support standard motherboards as well. So if you've got a motherboard you want to transplant into it for now, and then maybe get a Project Zero motherboard later down the line, you can do that. So we're going to be doing a quick sort of hands-on unboxing, seeing what you get in the box and just having a close-up look around the case, seeing what's compatible in terms of coolers and liquid coolers and all that kind of stuff. Then we'll move on to a system build and then some thermal testing to compare it against a couple of other cases. And then we'll come to some conclusions at the end. So don't forget, you can like and comment down below, just really helps punch me through the algorithm and gets me noticed. And then you can also subscribe to my channel if you want to as well. Always means a lot to have your support. And if you really want to support me, then you can check out where to buy this case and all of the hardware from down in the description down below, because I've got a load of really interesting buy links down there where you can buy this case and all the other hardware, as I say. And I just get a bit of a cutback from those links, which helps me to continue running this channel. And you can also visit my Amazon shop as well. There's all of the best hardware that I've tried and tested here on the channel. All of the best hardware you can see in my Amazon shop as well, so you know what you're getting, and it's not just been put into a pretty PC or anything like that. I have actually tried it and tested it against other hardware. And also, finally today, thanks for MSI for sponsoring today's video and sending over the fabulous 300R Project Zero, and let's crack on with the review. All right, so we are going to have a walkthrough of the case and a hands-on, and just have a quick look at all of the different features and those kind of things, and all of the stuff that you might be interested in, but it gets a little bit tricky just telling that from a website, so we're going to have a proper in-depth hands-on overview of it. So the accessory set, first and foremost, we just get, pretty much the usual stuff in here. We have a whole bunch of cable ties. The cable ties on the case are actually Velcro, but there's just some extra plastic ones in the box. We've also got some of these extra kind of fixers for the flanges, the like pop-on sections on the side panels. So if any of those do break, which they might do over time, I think I've only maybe had one break out of every single case that I've looked at over the last like 20 years. So the fact that they include some spares here is a good thing, and there's all different sizes there by the looks of things as well for all the different panels. So that's a nice move from MSI. You get some basic instructions. Pretty much just a quick installation guide, but for the main instructions you'll probably want to head online because they have the latest up-to-date version on there as well. And I would always suggest that you do that, go online and get the latest instruction manual, whether you're using a case or a motherboard or whatever. So we also have a snazzy chrome Project Zero label, so this can go on your on the glass side panel or something like that, and just something a little bit extra just to set it apart from everything else. The rest, we've basically just got a bunch of screws down here. So some interesting additions though. There are some PSU shroud screws here, and I'll just mention while I've actually got the screws in my hand, what these are for is there are two 120mm fan mounts down here, and these screws just allow you to screw those fans to those two fan mounts. So there's obviously a big vent down here. You might want to boost the airflow to your graphics card by shoving some air into it from below, that kind of thing. And as I mentioned, the rest of the screws are just for your case and all the other components that you might want to install into it. So let's get rid of all of that stuff. And here we have the 300R Project Zero. So first and foremost, I will go ahead and grab the side panel, which is just behind me somewhere, because I kind of wanted to show you the power supply panel and then kind of have this thing, put it on and then take it off again to see what we're dealing with. So glass side panel, it's kind of edge to edge glass, but you've got this kind of white bevel over the edge there. So installation is really, really easy, just like that. And there's something I'm really sensitive to is any kind of rattles and that kind of stuff from these pop-on side panels. There is no rattling going on here whatsoever. That panel is solid in its position. There's no rattling, so hopefully there won't be any vibrations. No screws required either, and those popping connectors at the top really doing their job. This thing is super sturdy, and needs a little bit of force to get it on and get it closed, but that's not necessarily a bad thing, is it? And you only have to do it once, obviously, when you're closing the side panel. Two little metal flanges down the bottom, so it's super easy to remove. And the far side panel is pretty much the same. So I'm just going to put that panel down behind me, and then we can start looking at the case. So first and foremost, we should probably talk about the front of the case first, because that's where a lot of the interesting stuff is going on. Quick mention of the front panel up over here. So we've got power and reset buttons. Then we have a headphone and microphone combined jack, and then we've got two USB 3 ports and one Type-C port over the back there. So pretty standard in terms of front panel. Now, the actual front panel of the case, the physical front panel here, is kind of like a multi-layered thing. So we've got this really nice CNC cut design here with the big mesh going down with the two large 160mm fans in the front that we'll look at in a second. That just pops off like so. And we've got a nice MSI or MAG logo down the bottom. And that just pops in. Again, it's super easy to fit that on. And then we have a very large dust filter, so top to bottom dust filter. So this is super easy to get at. No screws or any kind of unnecessary force required so far. So this thing you can just pop out and give it a vacuum and get rid of all the dust that is probably going to collect on that thing over time. And then we are left with the two blade fans on the inside. And as you can see, these things have kind of like dual fan blades. So you've got a row of, or a set of fan blades in here. Then you've got a ring. And then you've got another set of fan blades, and then you've got another ring out here. And the end result of that is that this thing is very sturdy, and MSI says that it allows for focused airflow. So I'm assuming it's kind of boosts static pressure, focuses that airflow and prevents it kind of splaying out to the sides. So there's two of those, very similar design, if not identical design, on the smaller 120mm fan at the back of the case. That is not RGB lit, but these do feature RGB lighting, and it's all pre-connected for you inside the case as well. Now, a really interesting feature here though, and this isn't, I don't think it's a feature that I've actually seen before. Let's just see how easy this front panel is to get off. Not too tricky, a little bit more force than the other two, but nothing crazy. Now, the really interesting thing here is that there are two rails, literally just running down there. We'll look inside the case in a minute. But this is the best view of what I want to talk about now, which is that these two rails, which are here to secure the fans, you can see that these two things line up, those rails can move, and you can see that there are different notches either side, and it's the same at the bottom, down there as well. It's exactly the same down there. You basically unscrew these things, and then you move those rails inwards, depending on the fan size. Now, we've got 160mm fans in here at the moment, so they are right at the extremes. The next notch in supports 140mm fans, and the next notch in supports, as you guessed it, 120mm fans. And you could also like shift things backwards and forwards to move things closer or away from your motherboard, depending on the fan size, of course. But sounds kind of counterintuitive. It's like most cases you just have all the rails, they're already supporting multiple different fan sizes. But if I flip it around this way, what you will see is that between the rails, there is nothing. It's just fan. So what that means is that by shifting the rails backwards and forwards to cater for your fan size, it means that if you're using 140mm or 160mm, 16 centimeter fans like we've got in here now, you don't have a whole bunch, like another couple of centimeters of rail obstructing your fan. So you've got this lovely wide opening, all that airflow coming through, and it's unimpeded. Now, if I show you the roof section, wanted to look at this separately in a minute, but I'm just going to pop this open now as well. As you can see here, if we have a 140mm fan, that's going to be like between there and there. That's if you want 120, this is 140. They're the rails that you need for 140. Look at all this. That is just going to, or this hole, there's like an inch of metal here that is just going to be obscuring your 140mm fan. So this is kind of a really interesting addition here from MSI, and I don't know whether I've actually seen that movable fan rails on any other case. Obviously, it's a little bit more difficult. If you are going to replace those two front fans, there's a bit of unscrewing and adjusting and all that kind of stuff. But once you've set it up, you're only really going to have to do that once. That's a really, really cool feature, and I'm hoping that's going to boost the airflow as well. So that's it with the blade fans in the front. And if we just quickly look at the fan in the rear, we can see that this thing has a similar design. It's got the internal ring there, and then it's got another row of fans out here, and then it's got the external ring as well. So that external ring has been used on quite a few other fans as well, just to provide a bit of extra strength and stability to the fan when it's spinning, and it prevents the fan blades potentially hitting the edge of the casing and that kind of stuff as well. So it's an interesting feature. It remains to be seen how it actually performs. So I'm just going to whip around, and we can have another look at that rear panel, or top panel should I say. So the top panel kind of just slides and then clips into place like so, and then you've got a couple of screws on the end, and if we just lift it off again, we can see that inside we have another dust filter, and this thing is just a magnetic one, so it just peels off. Super easy to get at for keeping the inside of your PC dust free, and obviously the roof is probably where you're going to be exhausting anyway, so whether it's with extra fans or an AIO liquid cooler, that kind of thing. And let's flip the thing around, and we'll just finish up the exterior walk around. So here we have the rear of the case, and there are lots of very large vents here to add extra airflow. And again, this thing just pops off like so, very, very easy. Metal flanges on the bottom that just secure it. And I'm just going to test for any vibration here as well. So there's maybe the tiniest bit on this end. You can see that that panel kind of comes away, but it's not really loose. Like, I have to pry it away from that. And then you've also got the top panel that's going to be securing it from the end as well. So I don't think that will have pose any problems, but I will definitely look out for that when I'm doing the system build later and actually testing it. So let's head on inside the case. And if we head down the bottom here, a couple of bits I wanted to mention. One is the PSU shroud down here. So this thing actually slides out. So you can actually take the whole thing out, and that gives you a nice big space to slot your power supply in from this side, rather than having to deal with the pesky, really narrow gap over there and dealing with your cables and everything else. So you can just slide everything in here and then feed your cables through around the back. Just a slightly easier way of doing it. And obviously, this is where you will find those additional 120mm fan mounts as well, if you wanted a little bit of extra cooling for your graphics card, for example. So I'm just going to pop that thing back in if I can. So that's back down. And then also down the bottom, we have a combined hard disk, SSD, and pump mount. So the sort of square mount here is where you'll be able to mount your pump or combined pump and reservoir, that kind of thing. This thing is removable. If you just want to get rid of that and just have a bit of extra airflow from the bottom, you can fit an extra fan in the bottom down the case as well. So lots of kind of customization and flexibility on show here. We've also got a graphics card mount to prevent graphics card droop. Also useful if you're going to be moving your case around, your system around. You might be taking it to a friend's house or a LAN party or something. These things can actually help just to secure your graphics card and prevent it being knocked around and all that kind of stuff. And we will now move on to the rear panel. And most interesting thing here, obviously, is the fan and lighting hub. So this thing is pre-connected to all of the fans inside the case. So the two RGB front fans down here and the rear fan, which is just over across the back there. We have single connectors for all of these. So the first thing you want to do is hook up the SATA cable that powers the hub. And then we have two other cables to deal with. We have the RGB cable, which obviously only feeds the front fans, and we also have the 4-pin PWM cable that you can plug into your motherboard if you wanted to provide the rest of the fans some speed from your motherboard, and that just kind of divvies up into all the fans inside the case from one fan header. So you've got a couple of extra ports on here. You've got an extra fan header if you want to connect an all-in-one liquid cooler to it. You've got two extra RGB connectors as well. You'll probably want to connect your CPU fans and pumps and things to your motherboard though. And obviously here we have the Project Zero cutout, so the motherboard will be poking through here in a minute once we've installed it. And we can go and take a look at that a little bit later on. And then here we have a couple more storage areas. So we've got mounts for SSDs and hard disks and those kind of things. So those two things, again, they're removable if you want to get rid of them and have better access to the CPU area cut out here. And we also have a fan mount down here, so we've got space for a 360mm radiator or three 120mm fans down here, and obviously we have the vent in the side panel down here that allows that to exhaust. So I do kind of like a side vent. I think it's kind of a little bit edgy, and it still allows you to dump all the hot air from your radiator straight out of the case, so it's a pretty efficient way to roll. And I think that is pretty much it. There's one other thing I wanted to mention, which is that the front fans, hopefully you can just about see that, they have a little switch down here, and that basically adjusts the range of the fan up to sort of high speed, medium speed and low speed. So if you wanted to make sure those fans don't spin up that much, even if your motherboard's shoving, you know, kind of full speed at them, you will be able to limit that full speed on the low setting. You've also got medium and high. So a lot of this will be down to your own preference in terms of noise versus cooling levels. Always recommend you give your system a bit of a test drive and spend a few hours just kind of customizing the cooling to your own liking and your own tasks. So that is about it. What we'll do now is just run through a very, very quick 3 things I love and 3 things I don't like so much about the MSI 300R Project Zero. So the first thing I really love about the 300R Project Zero is that we have these adjustable fan mounts. Now what it does mean is that as well as supporting smaller 140mm, 120mm fans, the 160mm fans that are included here aren't obstructed thanks to these adjustable fan mounts. So here they're right out to the sides, which means that when you look inside, you will see that there's no additional shrouds for those smaller fans obstructing the airflow. A really good feature there from MSI. Another thing I really love about the 300R Project Zero are the side panels. They are very, very, very easy to install. Just like so, they clip on, and there is next to no, or certainly on the glass panel at least, there is no vibration or movement there whatsoever. So super easy to install and remove, and no chances of any rattling or vibration. Our third thing that I love about the case is the pre-installed fan and lighting hub up here. It just means that you just have 2 connectors that you can hook up to your motherboard, and all of the lighting, RGB lighting and fan speeds are taken care of by just one connector for each of those things. So a great way to cut down on cables and just make your life a lot easier. So the first thing that I'm not so keen on with the case is the top panel. There's nothing inherently wrong with it. It looks a lot like other roof fan panels that we've encountered in the past. But what we had on the front panel was a really, really great design that doesn't impede the airflow of larger fans. Now, we can obviously see that we have a 120mm fan mount here, but if you use a larger 140mm fan, you can see that this whole great chunk of metal is going to be blocking your fan. That doesn't happen with the front mount. It's a really clever idea, but I don't know why MSI couldn't have actually employed that in the roof as well.
Another thing I would have liked to have seen is a few more cable ties. There aren't really enough here to cater for the extra cables that you're going to be dealing with in a Project Zero system.
The third thing that I'm not so keen on is the clearance behind the side panel. Now, this is a Project Zero case, which means that we are going to have the connectors from our motherboard literally sitting right here, and we need to get the 24-pin ATX connectors and CPU and 8-pin CPU connectors kind of bent round at an angle, and it's a very, very small space to do that. So I would prefer to have had maybe an extra 10 millimeters, 20 millimeters of clearance here, because at the moment there's not much more clearance than you see on an existing case, but a potentially much harder job to do with cable tidying.
We don't usually see much variation in the case results, but the 300R Airflow Project Zero managed to match the best result of the NZXT H6, and those big 160mm fans in the front clearly doing a very good job at shoving airflow through to the CPU cooler. And also we've got that rear fan that's in very close proximity to the cooler in our system as well. So the Be Quiet Dot Base Pro with the mesh open at the front is just a degree behind the NZXT H5 flow and NZXT H7 flow, just a couple more degrees warmer, and those things, you know, a degree or two is probably within the margin of error. 2 degrees is starting to edge out of that territory, and then we have the Cooler Master Masterbox TD500 Mesh V2 and the Be Quiet Dot Base Pro 901 with the closed front vents to make it a little bit quieter out at the bottom end of the table with the highest temperature of 76. So not a huge variation here, but still the MSI case coming out on top. With the GPU temperature, we actually have two results for the MSI case, because we had one just in its stock configuration, and then we had the case with two fans strapped to the PSU shroud, because there are two 120mm fan mounts down there and a big nice mesh in the top of the PSU shroud, so we just wanted to see what difference that would make. Unfortunately, it seemed to increase the GPU temperature, so I can only assume the fact that that air is being drawn essentially from the PSU chamber and kind of chucked up towards your graphics card means that it's kind of disrupting the airflow in the case, and even though there is air going towards your graphics card, it's not particularly cool, and you're kind of preventing the cool air from the front fans reaching your graphics card as well, just kind of disrupting that airflow. So probably seems like it's a good idea. I think if that airflow was coming from the front or the side of the case, like we've seen in plenty of other cases, that does definitely boost GPU temperatures. But here it is more of a hindrance, because without those fans, we actually saw the best GPU temperature that we've seen from any of these cases, and that is 62 degrees. Again, within the margin of error, perhaps between the NZXT H7 Flow RGB and the Be Quiet 901. But as we approach sort of 65 degrees, that's where there's definitely a difference, and the MSI case comes out on top. So definitely a case for not using those PSU fan shrouds and just sticking with the stock cooler configuration.
So what do we make of the MSI MPG Velox 300R Airflow Project Zero then? Well, this case is really good in its own right. Even if you discount all the Project Zero stuff, which this case obviously supports, so if you've got one of those rear connector motherboards, it will fit fine in this case. Even with all of that discounted, this is still a fantastic case for the money. We have excellent cooling, both GPU and CPU, even though it's not really worth installing those power supply shroud fans. They seem to hinder airflow for the GPU and make it run a teeny bit hotter, rather than just letting the rest of the case do its thing. We have some really intuitive fan mounts at the front, which basically widen the gap that your fans are able to blow airflow through, especially if you're using larger fans like 140mm and or the included 160mm blade fans as well, and they seem to do an excellent job at very low noise levels as well. This case is very quiet, even though all of our testing was actually done at the high speed setting just to maximize the cooling performance on show. There's excellent liquid cooler performance, or space in here should I say, for liquid coolers both on the side and the front and on the roof, and plenty of other features besides. Some really good cable tidying as well. All of the side panels are tool free, there's no vibration, and that includes the top panel as well. So for about 150 bucks, 120 pounds, that's a pretty good offering. And obviously we have the stunning white version here as well. Dust filters and all those kind of things fully catered for at the front, the roof, the rear side panel, as well as the base, and they're all very easy to access and removable, so you can just clean them up and vacuum them. So very impressed with this case. I love the way that MSI is continuing to improve these things. I guess the only thing I would like to see is a little bit more clearance around the rear of the case, just to make your life a little bit easier when it comes to cable tidying. And the USB Type-C connector, for example, did pop off once when I was putting everything in there. I know that they have made vast improvements with that compared to the first Project Zero case that I reviewed, and the motherboard that is, but that's just something I would like, maybe just like another 5 or 10 millimeters clearance around there. I don't really care about how wide the case is, it's not that wide as it goes, but just a little bit more clearance there, given that we've got all of those connectors around the rear of the motherboard to contend with, and a lot more cables than usual as well. So overall though, this is a fantastic case, and don't forget to check out the CPU cooler, liquid cooler that I used today, as well as the rest of the hardware down below in the description. You can see buy links to all of those things. That liquid cooler is especially good value for money as well. It's about £75 here in the UK, about $100 in the US for a triple fan AIO liquid cooler from MSI with full RGB lighting as well, and excellent performance. You can see my review of the MPG A13 liquid cooler in the description down below as well. So don't forget to check out the buy links below. If you want to thank me, you can buy me a coffee or just hit that thanks button just below the description. Also like to thank MSI for sponsoring today's video, and if you want to help me out as well, don't forget to like and comment down below. It just helps punch me through the algorithm and gets me noticed, and subscribing is always very much appreciated as well. Lots more cool stuff to come here on the channel. So Don't forget to check out the Amazon Prime sales as well. I'll be hopefully coming up with a video with some of my best buys that are coming up in that sale as well. There's some really good stuff from a whole range of prices from $5 all the way up to $1,000. So don't forget to check out my upcoming video on that stuff. So that's it for me today. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll be back very, very soon.